Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're very well tonight. Let's see who we have on the stream. We have Andrew, great to see you. Mo Green, great to see you. You and me, great to have you on. Stuart McKay, great to see you too, Stuart. Night Raven, sorry, not Killer, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well. Thanks for moderating. We have Raven 1983 Witch. I got a bit confused there. Great to have you on. We have Claudio, great to see you. Chatty Rat, great to have you on. Audrey, great to see you. Hope you're well today. We have Nico, great to see you, Nico. Enzo the God, great to have you on the stream tonight. We have the Freckle Punny, great to see you. Gene T as well. Lenan, great to see you. Colin Thompson, great to see you. Ivan. We also have Jackie, great to see you. We also have Pete Robbins, Eddie, Job, Stuart, Captain Capslock, CGM, great to see you. We also have Mark, great to see you. Verti, great to see you. Adrian too, great to have you on. Buxton, great to see you too. Katrina, great to have you on. We have Alan, we have Wild Fox, great to see you, and so many more. So great to have everyone on. I see Draconic, Inconsequential, and so many more. So I hope everyone's very well this evening. Hope you had a very nice weekend. We have the Freckle Punny who says Jacob Rees-Mogg, Minister for Catching Frightened Children, and loading them into the back of his wagon and racing through town with his team of horses. Thanks so much for that super chat. Oh my god, yes. Valerio, thanks so much for that super chat as well. Hi Max, do you think Boris is able to scrap the Human Rights Act? I advise to read Orwell's Animal Farm. It seems to describe what happens now in the UK. I don't think that it's difficult to see whether they're going to scrap the Human Rights Act. I don't think they're going to do that because it would put them in trouble with the Good Friday Agreement. So the Good Friday Agreement required the Human Rights Act to be passed. And if they were to tear that up or repeal it, I think it would put them in conflict with the Good Friday Agreement. Now, Boris Johnson has an 80-seat, or more or less a 70-seat majority at least. 70-something seat majority. So I don't see him tearing it up. I think they continually use it as a stick to beat the electorate with, say we're going to, or some sort of carrot for racists, vote for us and we're going to get rid of the Human Rights Act. If they were serious about getting rid of it, they could have done it any time in the last 2.5 years, but they haven't. It's a bit like triggering Article 16. They threatened to do it, but they're just using it as a bargaining chip or as a threat. In this case, it's a threat. It's more or less not so much a threat, but a carrot for the racists, because the racists say, look, you need to get rid of this Human Rights Act, and they say, yeah, we're going to do it, vote for us, we're going to do it. And in the end they don't, because there are consequences with repealing the Human Rights Act. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible for Boris Johnson or Priti Patel to try and push forward with this, but I don't see it happening, thankfully. But I could be wrong. In Animal Farm, the pigs live in the farmhouse, while in the Tory party, the pigs provide entertainment in Eton dorm rooms. Yes, yes, we know that story. When Boris Johnson spoke about opportunities, he meant that there were more ways to gain for themselves. Yes, the Brexit opportunities are not for the people; they're for disaster capitalists like Jacob Rees-Mogg. Mike Higgins, thanks so much for that super chat. Great to have you on, Mike. I hope you're well tonight. How long before the Brexit opportunity misinformation becomes known as Mog fog? I think you're onto something there, Mike. I think I'm going to steal that that analogy, or that catchphrase, I should say. Mog fog. Yes, Brexit mog fog. That's what it is. It's the misinformation. So when although we've seen a lot of Mog fog over the last 5 years, 6 years almost, since the referendum, how things are going to be so much better. The price of food is going to drop, price of clothes is going to drop, and they've gone in the opposite direction. Jacob Rees-Mogg predicted that life would be much easier post-Brexit. Regan Elite, great to see you on the stream. Crash Dummy, great to see you. Rial, great to have you on too. But it's just complete and utter lies. And instead of getting punished for telling lies, he gets promoted. That's the weird thing about Brexit, isn't it? You would imagine somebody who, in politics generally, if you're wrong, you get punished. You go away into the wilderness and you're forgotten about. But when it comes to Brexit, and Boris Johnson's government in particular, people who have been proven wrong are promoted. Look, Daniel Hannan, promoted to the House of Lords. Jacob Rees-Mogg, promoted to whatever the heck this is. So I go into this article. Rees-Mogg becomes Minister for Brexit Opportunities. We truly are living in the upside down. But I couldn't think of a better candidate for Minister for Brexit Opportunities in Boris Johnson's reshuffle. So it says here, Boris Johnson has made Jacob Rees-Mogg the new Minister for Brexit Opportunities and installed a key loyalist as his chief whip in a reshuffle intended to shore up his support after weeks of terrible headlines. So I said this on Twitter. I said this is a distraction. Things are going badly. Reshuffle the cabinet, and it distracts the public for a day or two from the chaos that's ensuing. Number 3, ignorance is strength. Exactly. Who's going to be the minister for? Who's going to be representing the Ministry of Love? I wonder. Nadine Dorries. She definitely suit that ministry. Thank you so much, number 3. Great to have you on the stream tonight. It goes on to say Rees-Mogg, who was a Commons leader, who now will be replaced by somebody else, probably maybe even worse than Mogg, if that's possible. We'll get to that in a moment. Rees-Mogg, who was Commons leader, is moved to the Cabinet Office to take on the newly created. Sorry, I have a notification appearing here. The newly created Brexit Opportunities Minister, a cabinet-level job that includes government efficiency. That also includes government efficiency is efficiently giving out contracts without any oversight, of course. Chris Heaton-Harris, another Brexiteer, formerly Europe Minister in the Foreign Office, takes over as Chief Whip from Mark Spencer. Heaton-Harris was a key member of the parallel parliamentary organisation advising the Prime Minister amid his recent woes. Spencer, a trusted ally of Johnson, was widely criticised by Conservative MPs over a series of missteps, including whipping them to support the disgraced Tory MP Owen Paterson. So yes, he was the one marching the MPs to the top of the hill and then marching them down again, where he said you have to support Owen Paterson, and then he marched them down by whipping them not to support. To vote against a measure, to vote for a measure and then against a measure. He's been made leader of the Commons in place of Rees-Mogg, overseeing the passage of government legislation. So where Jacob Rees-Mogg was, I think, in his element, he loved it there. He'll be replaced by this guy. Stuart Andrew, who was the Deputy Chief Whip, is moved to the Minister for Housing in the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, taking over from Chris Pincher, who's expected to become a whip. Andrew becomes the 11th Housing Minister in 12 years, a continual churn that housing groups have argued means the sector is not properly considered by government. Yes, like think about it. Organizations, community groups that are trying to lobby the government to do something for example, cladding. Well, if the minister is changing every 6 months, or every 2 or 3 months, you have to start everything from scratch again. So you build up a rapport with that minister, you lobby them, you try and get them to do something for you, and then the minister is replaced, and then you have to start from scratch again. I'm not talking about lobbying by giving them money. I'm just talking about petitioning them or trying to get them on board, trying to get them to take something seriously. Just think about, for example, look at Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon has been First Minister for how long now? It seems almost forever. And she's seen how many Prime Ministers and Secretaries of State and Chancellors, and she's seen so many pass through Westminster. It's difficult to keep track, I imagine. You know, the Tories try to present themselves as strong and stable, but they're completely the opposite. Paul Murray, thanks so much for that super chat. Brexit Minister Rees-Mogg, who needs writers of farce when we have this government? Yes. It's becoming more and more difficult to be satirical, because, you know, Jacob Rees-Mogg as Brexit Opportunities Minister. Jacob Rees-Mogg as a cabinet minister is insane, but Jacob Rees-Mogg as the Brexit Opportunities Minister, it's comedy that writes itself. I don't know what else to say. Thanks so much, Paul. Very, very, very kind of you for that super chat. Night Raven says Dido Harding will be the next Chancellor of the Exchequer. Yes. Maybe, you know, put Mark Francois as, I don't know, the head of the Department of Defense or something, or the Navy. No, the Navy is included in the Department of Defense. Bring back the first admiral? Was it the first admiral of the? No, was it the first Lord of the Admiralty? It goes on to say, in other moves, 2 ministers have taken on additional cabinet office duties to help out Steve Barclay, the main minister in the department, who was last week appointed Johnson's chief of staff, Michael Ellis, the paymaster general, and a noted Johnson loyalist, and the whip Esther Wheeler. In the Foreign Office, James Cleverly has taken over Heaton Harris's Europe brief. His existing role as Minister for Middle East, North Africa, North America will be redistributed among other ministers. And what's funny is James Cleverly was in America today or yesterday when he received the news that you're fired. He was meeting with the American ambassador, I think it was, or the American, I don't know who, maybe it was the Secretary of State in the US. While he was having his meeting, Boris Johnson sprung this reshuffle on him. Robert Duckham, thanks so much for that super chat. You're going to see a lot of Rees-Mogg. Yes. Rees-Mogg or Rees-Fogg. It's going to be something or the other. One of the other. Labour criticised the new job for Spencer. Thanks so much, Robert. Labour criticised the new job for Spencer, saying it was completely inappropriate to have a Commons leader who was connected to an investigation of alleged racism and whose whipping operation had been accused of seeking to blackmail MPs. Yes, so Spencer had been accused of withholding money from MPs if they didn't vote a particular way. For example, there was the Christian Wakefield who, remember that guy who crossed the aisle in the House of Commons to join the Labour Party, and interviewed after, whether we believe him or not, but interviewed after, he said that he was threatened by the whips that his constituency would not receive a new school unless he voted supported Boris Johnson. He voted with the government on, I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was free school meals or something. Which, in a sense, throws into doubt one of my greatest criticisms, or criticizing tools. I look at their voting record. I still think it's valuable. I think it's important to look at an MP's voting record. But if they're being threatened by the whips, it can make it a bit more difficult. But I think it's still the only thing we have. It's the only way of identifying what a politician actually truly feels, because we have to look at their voting record. They'll say something in Parliament and then vote the opposite way. So what they say is useless. What we need to look at is the voting record. The Tory MP Nasrat Ghani alleged last month that she lost her job as a transport minister. She was told that Muslimness had been raised as a problem at a meeting in Downing Street. Spencer voluntarily identified himself as, so he jumped on his own sword here to protect Boris Johnson, obviously, as the person Ghani made the claims about, saying that they were completely false and defamatory. Also last month, the former Tory MP Christian Wakefield alleged that the party whips told him he would lose funding for a new high school in his constituency if he did not vote with the government, while the senior Conservative backbencher William Ragg urged MPs to report ministers, whips and advisers to the Speaker or police for what he claimed was attempted blackmail by those suspected of opposing Johnson. So it seems, in order to protect Boris Johnson for another bit, the best thing he can do to distract the public is to have a reshuffle. And and this is working, unfortunately, because we're distracted in a sense. Distracted from so many things. Distracted from the parties. Remember, Partygate has somewhat gone on the back burner. We're not really talking about Partygate anymore. We won't be talking about, and I knew this was going to happen. People will talk about Partygate, and then after a couple of weeks, it'll be forgotten about. Now, Sue Gray's report hasn't been fully published. The police investigation isn't complete yet. So maybe it will come back in the news when that happens. But at the moment, we've moved on from Partygate to Boris Johnson and his Jimmy Savile line, and then on to this. Let me read some of your comments before we continue. To celebrate the reshuffle, a big garden party should be held. Yes, with lots of cheese and wine. Reality hits hard, doesn't show any mercy. Some bloke. I can't repeat that. Mogg has been demoted. Johnson blamed him for Patterson and several debacles. Yeah, this is, in a sense, it is a demotion because you set up the Brexit opportunities department. There are no opportunities, so he's not going to be very busy. He'll be working, one afternoon a week or something like that, or maybe even one afternoon a month, doing whatever he has to do in this as part of this portfolio. But yeah, it is a demotion because he's going to disappear he'll be taken off the scene. We're not going to see much of Jacob Rees-Mogg for a while, unless he's going to be doing interviews on Brexit. But he's not going to be the Brexit minister. He's not going to be the one, as far as I know, unless it is included in his brief. But I think that's Liz Truss, who'll be meeting with the European Commission over Northern Ireland, for example. But it would be nice to see Jacob Rees-Mogg meet with Maroš Šefčovič and explain to him how the electronic border on the island of Ireland would work. I'd love to see him explain that. He tried about 3 years ago, but didn't get very far. It was the Prime Minister who mentioned Savile. Adam's family is better yearly. The minister was ambushed by a reshuffle. Boris Johnson is behind attacks on Kerry, part of Operation Save Big Mud. Yeah, so this is very interesting. I wasn't going to talk about it, but it is interesting how a number of Tory MPs have begun attacking Carrie Johnson, saying that she's the one controlling Boris Johnson. And he's lost his mojo since he got married. Basically, that's what some of them have been saying. and that she's the one controlling him, which is a little... You can either look at it as somewhat sexist in a sense, a bit of misogyny there, that, you know, this domineering woman controlling Boris Johnson, or you could see it as Boris Johnson being controlled by others. And I think it's a bit more the latter than the former. Boris Johnson allowed himself to be controlled by, for example, many people. Dominic Cummings, for example. Dominic Cummings was able to pull the strings and get Johnson to do what he was told. So I don't think it's... I think Johnson is being controlled by people, and it's, you know, now it seems to be Carrie Johnson who's doing it. But Boris Johnson has been complaining about, he doesn't like the job, the long hours, the bad pay. He doesn't like it. Then just leave it. Quit. There were numerous opportunities for him to resign, and he didn't do it. You can't stay in a job that... You know, you can't stay in a job and continue to complain about that job when there are opportunities outside that job. He's not going to get sanctioned if he quits, okay? He can do something else. But I think Boris Johnson loves the idea of being Prime Minister. He doesn't like doing the work. He just likes the title. And he's probably trying to stick with it because he wants to maintain the title. But he doesn't want to do the legwork or the heavy lifting. And I think because of his weakness as an individual, he's allowing others to manipulate him. Dominic Cummings, maybe his wife Carrie, these people are able to manipulate Boris Johnson to do certain things. Cash Dummy, thanks so much for that super chat. If Reese Snob is part of Operation Red Meat, how many steaks can you carve out of him? And who will replace him as the leader of the house? Front Marks. Actually, I didn't say it here. The leader of the house will be... what's his name? Yes, this guy. Where is it? Not Spencer. The other guy. Oh, damn it, I can't remember who it was. Damn, I don't remember the name. Oh, crap, I hate when this happens. No, it's not Heaton Harris. No, I can't find it. There isn't. I don't remember who it is, but it was one of the whips who was responsible for where I said it before. I think it was. Okay, now I'm getting confused. But the guy who whipped the party to vote in a particular way, I think he's the new leader of the House. But Frank Markswa, he would be good defense secretary, I think, or minister for leveling something. I don't know what. Thanks so much for that super chat, Cash Dummy. Sorry, I couldn't remember the name of the guy. It's Mark Spencer. Okay, so it'll be Mark Spencer as Apologise. Thanks for that. Billy Boy, thanks so much for that reply. And I got a bit confused there. Who was going to be the new Mark Spencer? It will be Mark Spencer. Max, thanks so much. Okay. All right, let's move on. What happened the other day on Monday, yesterday? Time flies. That's what I'm saying. Things are changing so quickly. We can lose track of what's happening from one day to the next. Leveling down is the new one. Pressure mounts on Johnson to apologise for Jimmy Savile remark. Now, tomorrow, as you know, we have the Speaker of the House, who should, I hope, will open Parliament for Prime Minister's questions, demanding that Boris Johnson make an apology or retract the statement that he made last week, where he claimed that Keir Starmer was more interested in prosecuting journalists than Jimmy Savile. This thing has blown up, and Boris Johnson doesn't care. Boris Johnson knows that there is a certain section of society that love this sort of thing, and that's who he's speaking to. And also, I think he wants to do, and this is typical Boris Johnson, is just plant a seed of lies and then allow others to try and root it out. But it's already planted in many people's minds, and it's difficult to take that away. And that's Boris Johnson's modus operandi, is to tell the lie. It filters down into society, and then by the time the lie has been debunked, half the population are already believing it. And unfortunately, the polling seems to reinforce this point, because more and more people are starting to believe that there's no smoke. There's no smoke without fire. Mark Spencer? Don't you mean Frank Spencer? Alexis, thanks for that super chat. I think Frank Spencer would do a much better job, actually. For those who don't know, Frank Spencer was a comedy show from the 19th. I think it was Some Mothers Do Have 'Em. It was a comedy show from the 1970s, where Frank Spencer was an idiot who got into all sorts of problems. A bit like Mr. Bean, but slightly different. Thanks for that super chat, Alexis. Why is Frank Spencer? If Boris brings up that dude's past CV. So Boris Johnson is under growing pressure to apologise for remarks falsely linking Keir Starmer to the failure to prosecute Jimmy Savile after a senior cabinet minister and the Commons Speaker urged him to draw a line under the matter. A number of Tory MPs have been trying to move on. Yes, okay, whatever, move on. Let's talk about something else. And, Boris Johnson throws these things out, and then they have to go and clean up the mess. Number 10 made clear the Prime Minister would not apologise for the remarks, which provoked renewed anger when protesters shouted abuse at the Labour leader on Monday. Once again, this is typical Trumpian tactics. Donald Trump has been doing this during his presidency. Make a lie, tell a lie, and then allow the public to react as they see fit. Surrounding near Parliament, Starmer was branded a paedophile protector, and one demonstrator carried a noose. He and his Labour colleague David Lammy were bundled into a police car. I didn't know that. In a video today I said that Keir Starmer was bundled, but I didn't know if David Lammy was as well. 11 Tory MPs have called for only 11. He has a 70-seat majority, and 11 Tory MPs have called for Johnson to retract and apologise for the claims he made in the Commons last week. 11. Remember, he has at least a 70-seat majority, but 11 MPs have called for Johnson to retract the statement. It reminds me of the United States, where Donald Trump would say something absolutely obscene, and you'd have like one or two senators would complain about it. You'd have 2 or 3 Congress people complaining about it on his side. Same with Boris Johnson. 11. Number 3. Thanks so much for that super chat. What if Boris Johnson doesn't apologise and the Speaker doesn't kick him out? Boris Johnson will not apologise, and the Speaker will not kick him out. So it's not an if, it's a when. Look, but Johnson may make some sort of half-arsed. Thanks once again for that super chat. Johnson may make some half-arsed apology. I'm sorry if anyone was offended type of apology. Call it a boyfriend apology. It's where you You say, I'm sorry if you were offended, not I'm sorry about my actions. I'm sorry that you felt bad about it. And I think that's the most we'll get from Johnson. Or he'll double down. And I think that would be worse. Because then he'll try to push the idea that I didn't say anything wrong. I was telling the truth. And he may go down that line. I'm deeply concerned because Boris Johnson is near the end. And I think he's trying to go down fighting. And I'm not going to put money on it, but I think it's 50-50. There's a 50-50 chance of him making some sort of half-arsed apology, or there's a 50-50 chance of him going down, doubling down on this. And, or he may do a mix of the two. This is Boris Johnson we're talking about. So he could start off with, I'm really sorry if anyone was offended. And then towards the end, after Keir Starmer has asked his last question, Johnson will repeat this once again. But the Speaker of the House isn't going to do anything. Unless, it gets really rowdious. If there's a lot of people shouting, he may call out Johnson for breaking a rule in Parliament. So if Johnson is not looking the right way, or if Boris Johnson is going on too long, if he's ranting, he may get cut off, but he's not going to get punished, and he's not going to get called back. He's not going to be asked to correct the record. The Speaker has never done this. This Speaker has never done this. He's never demanded that somebody correct the record. And there aren't enough decent people, it seems, in the Conservative Party to force Boris Johnson to correct the record. And I said this before. Keir Starmer can't do anything about Boris Johnson. The only people who can are Tory MPs. And isn't it sad that the Tory MPs, there aren't more than 11 Tory MPs who are demanding that Johnson apologise? It's no skin off their nose. Many of the other MPs could easily ask him to do this. They're not going to lose their seat. They're not going to lose funding. Or maybe they will. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, did not defend the comments when asked about them on Tuesday. It's a uniquely sensitive issue, and I think the sooner the debate moves on, the better. So he is no comment, in a sense. He's not on one side or the other. This is typical Michael Gove, slippery as an eel. He told reporters at Convention of the North in Liverpool. The Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, condemned the abuse of Starmer. I wouldn't say condemned. He was like, this is very naughty, don't do it again. And the Shadow Home Secretary, and linked it to the Prime Minister's comments last week, which he called inappropriate. Yes, there were inappropriate comments. That's as far as he went. He went on to say these sorts of comments only inflame opinion and generate disregard for the House, and this is not acceptable. Our words have consequences, and we should be mindful of that fact. Boris Johnson has never suffered the consequences of his actions. Boris Johnson never suffers the consequences of his actions. So there's no point saying to Boris Johnson, you'll suffer, whatever you say has a consequence. Yeah, but it's not for me. There's no consequence for me. Consequence for other people. I say stupid crap, and Keir Starmer suffers the consequences. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of the whipping boy. During I think it was the Middle Ages, you would have the prince could not be beaten. The prince, the son of the king, could not be beaten. If he broke some rules, if he misbehaved, he couldn't be beaten. So instead, there was the whipping boy. So somebody had the job of taking the prince's punishment in the place of the prince, with the idea being that the prince would feel so bad that somebody else is getting punished on his behalf that he would change his behavior. No, it's not working that way with Boris Johnson. The fact that Keir Starmer is suffering the consequences of Boris Johnson's actions is not going to change Boris Johnson's behavior. Stuart McKay, thanks so much for that super chat. Desperate times need desperate measures. Is it worth writing to the Queen and asking if she can, if she has the legal power to order Johnson's execution? Go to. Well, probably somewhere hidden away in the library of the House of Commons, there's probably a line that allows the Queen to do this. But we would need to get into the House of Commons and read through a lot of books before we get to that. But maybe it's possible. Thanks so much, Stuart. It would be... You can write letters. Look, I'm joking, but writing letters actually to your MP is more powerful than marching, than protesting. And I can't say this enough. I'm a huge advocate for people protesting. You know, when I saw the tractors protesting if you want to call it, there a couple of months ago against the Brexit deal that Liz Truss signed, how farmers, you know, the trade deal with Australia and New Zealand, really damaging for UK farmers. When there was a protest, if you want to call it, a few tractors drove through a town on a Saturday afternoon. These things don't work. But you know what does work, especially in the UK, is writing to your MP. If enough people write to an MP, that MP will feel the pressure. And many times the MP wants to respond because they don't know if you're a voter or not, and they presume you are, and they want to keep you on board. They're more interested in a constituent writing to them than some protest that's taking place. Imagine for a moment, you know, you're an MP in Kent, and there's a protest taking place in Manchester. You don't give a crap about that. Doesn't matter if 1 million people turn up at that protest. You do not give a crap. And that's how it works, unfortunately. But 100 letters to that MP is going to shift the needle, is going to move them. Not 1 million people at a march, 100 letters to that MP. So even if you're in a constituency where there's a Tory MP, write to that MP. They don't know whether you voted for them or not. You don't have to say whether you did or not. But that has a real impact. Unfortunately, that's the way the system works. And you have to work within the framework of the system. But do write letters. Because they actually do work. Sorry, Max, but my local MP is Paul Scully, and writing letters to that snake oil salesman is completely pointless. I know from experience on many occasions. Sorry to hear that, Ewan. But I think maybe organize. Of course, you writing a letter on your own probably won't have much impact. But if you could get 100 or 200 people to write letters, all pretty much the same theme, I think it could, you know, because in some of these seats, they're looking at, I don't know Paul Scully, I haven't looked up his constituency, but you look at a constituency where there's a Tory MP who has a majority of like 400 or 500, which was the case in many constituencies back in 2019. You know, a few letters here or there would make them frighten them. If you have a majority of 400 and 100 people write to you complaining about your behaviour or complaining about why you're not standing up to Boris Johnson, that would if I was that MP, I'd be extremely nervous, and I'd try and do something about it, or try and look like I'm doing something about it at least. But I'm not going to listen to a protest that's taking place hundreds of miles away. Feeling the heat, Johnson thinks that he can do... feeling the heat. Johnson thinks that he can do a Trump because it does that. He'll scorch his rump because he's had Arcuri. It's the best that he doesn't fart and avoids the heat pump. Okay, sorry, I misread that. Thanks so much for that beautiful poem, Wee Scots Dog. Gareth McDonald, great to see you on the stream. Thanks so much for that super chat. Decent people. I'm not arguing that there are no decent people in the Tory party, but they're like sweet corn in a dirt. Technically, they kept their integrity, but they're still embedded in shit. Earbags. Was said. So there are one or two, and they're in the you-know-what. They have survived. Very nicely put. Thanks so much, Gareth. So I'll continue with this. It says here, Johnson's official spokesperson said the Prime Minister had already clarified his remarks to make clear Starmer was not personally responsible for the Savile case, because the comments were being capable of misconstrued by a tiny minority. Now, he has to go to Parliament. It's not saying something in the media, making some sort of vague statement about, I've clarified my comments on Keir Starmer. No, that's not how it worked. Asked whether the tiny minority included the crowd that surrounded Starmer, he said, "I'm not seeking to link anything. I wouldn't seek to look into motivations of individuals." Yes, but these people were motivated. Of course they were motivated by what Boris Johnson said. Now, some of these people are absolutely insane, but what's interesting is there was an ex-Tory councillor at this protest. He was shouting abuse at Keir Starmer. Somebody who was pictured, it seems, with Boris Johnson. I don't have the picture here in front of me, but you'll find it online. There's a picture of a young man with a bit of a beard, pictured with Boris Johnson a couple of years ago. And, he was one of these people at this protest. Now, he's no longer a councillor, but I don't know if he's still a member of the Conservative Party. Now, just imagine for a moment, I don't have the picture, but you can probably find it online. Imagine if Keir Starmer was Prime Minister and it was a picture of him with somebody who had done something like this to Boris Johnson, if Boris Johnson was in the opposition. Or imagine if Jeremy Corbyn was Prime Minister and there's a picture of him with somebody who attended a march and verbally abused and harassed Boris Johnson, for example. The Tories will be going insane. They'll be calling for the Prime Minister to resign. It goes on to say, Chris Philp, the digital minister, had earlier said that the comments that Starmer had failed to prosecute the child sex offender was not incorrect, but said Johnson had clarified that he did not mean Starmer took the decision when he led the Crown Prosecution Service. The first comments in the House on the previous Monday were capable of being misconstrued, and that was why it's important and right that a couple of days later that Boris Johnson did clarify that he was not suggesting at any time that Keir Starmer had personally responsibility for the case. Philip told BBC Breakfast. But he obviously did have a responsibility for the conduct of the CPS. How is that a correction, a clarification? Boris Johnson, look, the rules are that Boris Johnson said it in Parliament, then he goes back to Parliament to correct the record. It was misconstrued. So the problem is that the public misunderstood what Boris Johnson had said. No, Boris Johnson was very clear about it. It's in the record. So if Boris Johnson doesn't have a problem, if Boris Johnson believes that there's some misunderstanding, then he needs to correct the record. This could be his approach tomorrow, where he will say, "Look, I didn't say these things. It's all been a misunderstanding," and then he doesn't clear his name. He doesn't correct the record. It remains in the record, and it's once again a black mark in a sense against Keir Starmer, because years in the future people will imagine that people will forget who Boris Johnson. People won't remember who Boris Johnson was, and they'll read it and they're like, "Oh, Boris Johnson said about this guy. Who was this guy?" And then they will imagine that Keir Starmer was who Boris Johnson said he was. Johnson's initial comments did not suggest Starmer had taken institutional responsibility, but said the Director of Public Prosecution had spent more time prosecuting journalists and failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile. Tories, including the former Chief Whip Julian Smith and the Select Committee chairs Simon Horry and William Ragg, suggested Johnson should apologise. Others who voiced concern at the consequences of the Prime Minister's rhetoric, including the former Cabinet Ministers David Davis and Caroline Noakes and ex-Ministers Stephen Hammond and Tobias Ellwood, as well as 3 MPs elected in 2019, Anthony Manganel, Aaron Bell and Rob Largan. The husband of Joe Cox, the Labour MP murdered in 2016 by far-right extremist, also warned about the consequences of politicians leading credence to far-right conspiracy theories. Brian Cox said the Prime Minister's choice to inject poison into politics, and his comment had unintended consequences. Yes, Boris Johnson was probably warned against doing this. He was told you should not engage in this type of behavior by his aides, and he ignored that. He wanted the short political gain at the consequences of public safety. Because these people are insane. You do not feed these insane people. You don't feed into their insanity. Because this is what happens. And I just imagine for a moment, if Keir Starmer did not have the security entourage with him, if the police officers were not there, what could have happened? You know, we could be looking at something very serious today, and Boris Johnson would be probably crying crocodile tears. David McGinnis, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well tonight. Some weird comments in the stream. Okay, let's move on. So it says here, I want to move on to Brexit. Yeah, there are a few. Before we move to Brexit, almost 70% of people. Let me just check that you guys can see it. No, move up a little bit. Okay. Almost 70% of people think Prime Minister wholly or partly responsible for mob harassing Starmer, poll suggests. And in this poll, we see 69% say Prime Minister responsible for leader of the opposition being harassed. 54% 2019 Conservatives say so. Like, why? This is, real. What does James O'Brien say? This the color of your scarf type of mentality. Yeah, like if I have my scarf, will you can predict what I'm going to say by the color of my scarf. And 54% of 2019 Conservatives say also say, well, that's 54. Not a huge, almost 50-50. So 46% think, yeah, it's okay. Oh, before we continue, we have Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. OFFS, just seen that Jacob Rees-Mogg is the new Minister for Brexit Opportunities. His first act, bringing back chimney sweeps, workhouses and whipping boys. And child labour, of course, sending children up chimneys, and what else did they have in the Victorian period? They had little kids working looms and things like that because they had small hands. Many died, of course. It was disgrace. It was a horrible period to live in. But for Jacob Rees-Mogg, it was extremely uplifting. Thanks so much for that super chat, Gareth. But yeah, definitely whipping boys, certainly. I'm pretty sure Nanny would approve of that. 68% say he should publicly apologise to Starmer. 68% said he should withdraw comments. 64% say politics has gotten nastier in the last 5 years. 5 years, isn't that interesting? I'd actually go 6 years. Brexit has unleashed hell. Has taken the cover off a lot of racism and a lot of very bad behaviour. But apologising publicly means nothing. I want Boris Johnson should apologise in Parliament. He should retract that statement, because then it's on the permanent record. Because Boris Johnson will say anything everywhere outside the House of Commons. But he won't. He can make his fake apologies there. But I think what's more important is him to retract the statement, because he does not do that. So it would be a real step back for Johnson. Thanks for that super chat. So let's move on. Brexit. Oh my goodness. Let's take our little short break, and then we'll come back in a moment and we'll continue with Brexit. So let me bring up a comedy moment, and I hope you enjoy it, and then we'll be back in just a second.
So, first day, you must be excited. A bit nervous too. Number 10's a big job. I suppose it'll be good to finally have some grown-ups in charge. First things first, you will have to take down all the crayon drawings. Drawings? Just my little joke, because you're the grown-ups, you see, unlike those of us who've been working here up to now, who are apparently children. Children who like to party. Too soon. Sorry. No, I mean it's too soon. The suitcase of booze doesn't come out till Wednesday. Right. So, lots to talk about. Where would you like to start? How about with the good news? No, there's none of that. Oh. Here's a funny one though. The Prime Minister said last week in the House of Commons that crime is falling. But that's only true if you don't include fraud in the figures. So he needs to correct the record? I'm not sure you're going to fit in here. The funny thing is that Kwasi then went on TV to defend the Prime Minister and said that most real people don't really consider fraud to be a crime. Okay? Coincidentally, we now also have a donor who gave 200 grand to the party, who's complaining that he never got the access that he paid for. Cash for access? Sounds dodgy. Well, it was actually in the form of auction prizes, which is a little loophole we've built in. We made the prizes so appalling, we never thought you'd actually want to claim them. What were they? Breakfast with the Prime Minister, a Japanese meal with Jeremy Hunt, and a magical show by Penny Mordaunt. Sounds like the stag do from hell. Indeed. What else? The plan to tackle the NHS backlog has been delayed. By the Treasury? Officially, no. Unofficially? Yep. Plus, Rishi's backing more oil and gas expansion in the North Sea, which blows a massive hole in the PM's net zero pledges. Why don't we just rein him in? We're not sure how many photos he's taken. Right. Anything else? Loads, mate. I'll rattle through them. Cost of living crisis, energy crisis, crisis in Northern Ireland, crisis in Ukraine, crisis in Canada. Canada? I thought they were the most boring country in the world. They're making up for it now. Blimey. Joe Biden's a lame duck. Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are teaming up. And, Nadine Dorries is in Saudi Arabia. She's what? Apparently picking up tips on how to deal with people who criticise the leadership. At least she's loyal. That's one word for it. Anything else? Well, you know if you have a remote control that stops working, would you replace the batteries or the casing? The batteries, obviously. And yet it seems to me that we're both plastic and covered in buttons. So what are you going to do now? Me? I'm going to work for a right-wing think tank with opaque funding and then write snarky articles on the side for the Telegraph about how badly you're doing. I think I might start with an exclusive about how much you hate Canada. Ciao. Hello? What, he actually used the word clown?
Amazing. Matt is wonderful. Actually used the word. It was like, that was insane. It was like the new spokesperson who went to Boris Johnson and says, he's not complete clown. What world are we living in? Can you imagine taking somebody from the 1990s, during the period when John Major was leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister, taking somebody from that period and putting them in now, they'd be like, this is a dystopia. This is not good. And maybe they'd be right. So let's move on to Brexit, from one dystopia to another. Enforcing protocol checks cost Northern Ireland at least £8.6 million last year, says Poots. So the Stormont Minister has criticised the huge operating costs of the Northern Ireland protocol checks as he outlined the multi-million pound bill for the first time in operation. So Agriculture Minister Edwin Poots is from the DUP, detailed around £8.65 million of expenditure throughout 2021, but said that the cost outside of his department meant the overall total was significantly higher. Poots, who last week ordered a unilateral halt to the agri-food checks, was responding to a Stormont Assembly question posed by Traditional Unionist Voice leader Jim Allister. A High Court judge has suspended Poots' direction to stop checks on incoming GB goods pending a full legal challenge in his decision next month. Addressing the Assembly today, the Minister said that the salary costs of the additional staff needed to complete the checks at Northern Ireland ports was around £4.4 million. He said the total included about $1 million in agency staff. He said the running costs of the checking facility in Northern Ireland and the service contract for lorry seal checks carried out on the GB side of the Irish Sea total $4.2 million. Now, it's important to remember that there are checks on, for example, land animals. They have always been taking place on animals moving from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland are treated as one entity when it comes to certain types of checks. And this is nothing to do with Brexit. This was always the case. But there are more checks, yes, because of Brexit, not the protocol. You know, this is the irony of all of this, is the people shouting the most about the protocol are the ones who campaigned for Brexit. Edwin Poots is a Brexiteer. Edwin Poots is complaining about the costs of these checks, which are a consequence of Brexit. It doesn't make any sense. It's like somebody who buys a Porsche and then complains about having to put petrol in it. But don't buy the Porsche and then you wouldn't have to complain about putting petrol in it. This is the Brexiteers in Northern Ireland. They're complaining about the Brexit that they got, but we were telling them, you're not going to like the type of Brexit you're going to get. And they said, no, stop scaremongering. We said, Brexit is a bad idea. John Major said it. Tony Blair said it. These are people who probably know a bit about peace in Northern Ireland. They said that Brexit would be a bad idea, a bad thing for Northern Ireland. And Edwin Poots and others said, shut up, we know what we're doing. And now they're complaining about the consequences. And, it's not that they're saying, okay, we were wrong and we're complaining about the consequences. No, they still want Brexit. They still want a Brexit. I don't know how I would give anything to speak to one of these people from the DUP. And the first question I'd ask them is, why did you vote for Brexit? And then I'd ask them, okay, they say, to get out of the EU and so on. Then I'd say, are you happy with your Brexit? Because if they say yes, then the conversation is over. If they say no, I say, well, then why did you vote for your Brexit? Why did you vote for Brexit if you're not happy with it? It's not like nobody told you this was going to happen. Your response before this was going to happen was, this is scaremongering. Gareth, thanks so much again for that super chat. Very kind of you tonight, Gareth. KS showing Keir Starmer showing true leadership when he took responsibility for the CBS failures while he was the Director of Public Prosecutions, a kind of leadership that Boris Johnson will never understand. Yes. Look, Keir Starmer has his faults, but I think he'd make a good Prime Minister. There's a difference between being a good politician or being a good speaker or being a good party leader and being a Prime Minister. And I think Keir Starmer is probably one of the best people there is available to be Prime Minister. He understands how things work. He's not perfect, okay? He's not wonderful at public speaking. I think he's a bit stiff. He doesn't come across as charismatic as some other people. But what the country needs at this moment is a good pair of hands, steady hands. Not a clown. He's not a complete clown. Thanks so much for that super chat, Gareth. Anyway, let's move on with some more Brexit stuff. Oh yes, I want to show you this. So this is Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the leader of the DUP.
I have said to the Prime Minister that I want to meet with him urgently. I want to see the Prime Minister come to Northern Ireland, meet with political parties and take stock of the situation.
So you want Boris Johnson to come to Northern Ireland and tell you that there's no border in the Irish Sea. That's probably what he's going to do, like he did before. And Geoffrey Donaldson would be like, but Prime Minister, there's a border. No, there's no border. But Prime Minister, there's a border over there. No, that's not a border. Don't you believe me? Yes, Prime Minister, I believe you, but that's a border. No. You think it's a border. It's not a border. Trust me, I'm the Prime Minister.
After all, the UK government has it within its power to resolve these issues, the issues that have given rise to the actions that were taken last week by my...
It's within their power to resolve these problems. Okay, then I don't think they're problems, but if you think they're problems, why do you think that the government have not resolved these issues? We're over a year into post-transition period Britain, post-transition period Brexit. Why do you think that they haven't done anything about it? Could it be that they don't care?
Party. It is time for the government to act. The time for words are over. I certainly think the government could do more. It's over 6 months now since the government gave a commitment in its command paper last July.
He doesn't get it. Somebody online said it's like, it's like where somebody has a boyfriend or an obsessive boyfriend or an obsessive girlfriend, and they can't get over it that the relationship is over. Jeffrey Donaldson is like somebody. Boris Johnson dumped Jeffrey Donaldson, and Jeffrey Donaldson says, no, he still loves me. No, you don't understand our relationship. he's just trying to play hard to get. That's what he sounds like. No, he does really love me. Boris Johnson really does love me. It's just you just don't understand our relationship. And he says these mean things, and it does hurt me from time to time. But deep down, I know that he still loves me. And we're all going, no. He has another girlfriend now. Okay, he's with someone else. No. That's just to get back at me. That's just to make me jealous.
To take action to deal with the harm that they recognise the protocol is causing to political stability and to our economy in Northern Ireland. Over 6 months later, no action has been taken. So I do want to see the government stepping up, and I want to see the EU step up as well. They said that the protocol was primarily about protecting political stability, the Good Friday Agreement, the political institution.
I wish you'd stop invoking the idea of protecting the Good Friday Agreement. The DUP were against the Good Friday Agreement.
In Northern Ireland, well, it has absolutely failed to do that. The EU needs...
It's not the EU's. The EU didn't force you to pull out of the Stormont Assembly. You pulled out of the Stormont... the executive. You pulled out of the executive, not the EU. The EU didn't force you out. You made that decision. You made that political decision. Companies in Northern Ireland, businesses in Northern Ireland were saying, don't do this. We need stability. And you said, we don't give a crap. We want to play our political games.
We need to recognise this and take action to remove the barriers to trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
It's the same old story. We wanted our Brexit. We got our Brexit. We opened the box and we found a turd inside. And now we're complaining. We want somebody to take the turd away and replace it with a unicorn. We said, I'm sorry, there are no unicorns. I want a unicorn. I believed I was getting a unicorn, even though people told me there are no unicorns. I believed there was a unicorn. I want my unicorn. Sorry. Let's move on. I get a little bit agitated about these things because these people really don't get it. Boris Johnson does not care about you. Boris Johnson does not care about Northern Ireland. Ian Paisley was in the House of Commons yesterday, or today, I think it was. I don't remember if it was today or yesterday. And he was pretty much, there were about 10 people in the House of Commons. And he was banging on about how, you wouldn't have got your Brexit if it wasn't for the DUP. I wouldn't have said that part out loud because it made you look like a fool. So this is something I think there should actually be cooperation between the EU and the UK on. So it says here, UK and European scientists urge EU to allow UK access to £10 billion fund. Now this is complicated because the EU have said, the European Commission in particular have said that, look, if Boris Johnson is undermining the Good Friday Agreement or undermining the Northern Ireland Protocol, then we can't allow the UK to have access to other projects because they are undermining the Northern Ireland Protocol. But scientists are saying both European and UK scientists are saying, look, this has to be something separate. And I tend to agree with them. I understand the EU's position that, we can't allow the UK to break international law, or we can't allow them to undermine peace in Northern Ireland. But when it comes to, for example, funding for the Horizon project or others, the Horizon program or others like that, I think the EU needs to allow the UK to be taking part in it. Because this is not political. This is about science. And it goes on to say the EU is being urged to stop punishing scientists and end the year-long delay in letting British universities and laboratories access its flagship £10 million Horizon Europe funding programme. Scientists across Europe, the UK and Europe, have launched a campaign to get the UK admitted into the programme amid continuing fears that Brussels is using the fund as leverage in negotiations over the Northern Ireland Protocol. The EU succeeded to associate members of the UK as part of the wider Brexit deal struck on Christmas Eve 2020, but it has still not ratified the deal or a similar one with Switzerland, held up by a dispute over a draft treaty binding the country to the bloc. We have a super chat. Just make sure I didn't miss the other one. Cal, thanks so much for that super chat. Gavin Robinson replied all this to David McCullough last week about the Good Friday Agreement not being respected. He said the Good Friday Agreement was not being respected. Gavin Robinson said the Good Friday Agreement is not being respected. I'd like to see that. Thanks for that super chat. I'll check that out. I had trouble finding that video where it just showed the Irish journalist talking to the DUP member of Parliament. Unfortunately, it got cut off before we got his response, but his response probably would have been, I don't know. The Swiss astronomer and Nobel Prize winner Didier Zoelkes, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Described the delays as a tragedy for science in the UK, Switzerland, and Europe. Lord Kinnoll, the chair of the House of European Affairs Committee, which has recently investigated the impact of the delay, said this is a mutual self-harm problem, and that's not good for something very precious, which is European research, scientific research. Last week we had two British academics and a European academic in front of us, and there was a great clarity from all of them about how this was harmful to European science. Collaborative projects are much more than just a check. If you say you have a half-funded project that you're keen to do, you are not necessarily going to get the thumbs up. Kualzud, who's backing a European-wide campaign by scientists across the bloc to get membership ratified for the UK and Switzerland, said, to be blunt, politicians have decided to use participation in Horizon Europe as a bargaining chip in wider negotiations. He wrote in the Financial Times, if this is the way the game plays out, nobody loses. We risk destroying a fantastic everyone loses. Everyone loses. Everybody loses. We risk destroying a fantastic tool that the EU has spent decades developing by excluding two of the biggest players in the global research arena for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with the program itself. And I agree. I'm an advocate for the European Union. I'm a big supporter of the European Union. But as I said on a number of occasions, it's not perfect. And it's run by people. And a lot of people are stupid people. Now, there are also people who are concerned about what's happening in Northern Ireland. And they're maybe using this as a bargaining chip, which I don't think is the right approach. I think these things have to be separate. We shouldn't be damaging important research over political issues in Northern Ireland. Deal with the issues in Northern Ireland separately. I think they have to be separate. I understand, if the UK is breaking international law, they have to be punished in some way. But, affecting scientific research is not the answer. Anyway, let's move on. I just wanted to touch on that story because I think it was important. Back to Boris Johnson for a moment. What do other politicians think of Boris Johnson's antics?
We just played a snippet of the video that was filmed last night outside Parliament of Sir Keir Starmer and that mob, and I'm sure it's a clip you will have seen numerous times today. What did you think when you saw it?
It's sickening. I don't think any politician should have to put up with what Keir Starmer experienced last night. And, it is a reflection, I think, of the toxic cocktail of conspiracy theories, smears and lies that swill around our politics now. And I think the choice for all responsible politicians is, do we unite, whatever our other differences might be, to push all of that to the margins of our politics? Or do we do what Boris Johnson did, which is almost weaponise that to make attacks on an opponent, and to do that in the full knowledge that that can and does stir up the kind of hatred and abuse and harassment that Keir Starmer experienced yesterday. So this is a really dangerous moment for our politics, but I think it can also be a positive moment for our politics if responsible politicians come together in the right spirit. Now, I would finally just say that, credit to Keir Starmer and to David Lammy, actually, who will know more than most of us about these far-right attacks, for the way they conducted themselves. I have had some experience personally of being confronted on the streets by the far-right. It's not pleasant, it's deeply unpleasant, and I'm sure they will have been deeply shaken by it, but I think they deserve credit for the way in which they handled it. But this is a moment to decide that this is not acceptable in our politics. Tough scrutiny of politicians is essential in our democracy, but when that crosses the line and becomes the stirring up of hate and abuse, something has gone far wrong, and that's a moment to take a line in the sand, to draw a line in the sand and say that we cannot allow this to continue.
I couldn't agree more. Let me just read some of your comments before we comment on this. Max, please, the UK government will have nothing to do with the EU. Think Erasmus project, student exchange programme. And I really regret what's happened with what happened with Erasmus, and for political reasons the UK government said we don't want to be part of it because it contains the word Europe. Okay, Erasmus, so it's European. We don't want anything to do with that, and we don't care about the consequence. This is not so much about what's happening with the politicians. I think that we need to focus on the scientists themselves. Like, how does this benefit science? And there are very smart people in Switzerland, there are very smart people in the UK, and it would be, I think, a loss for science if these people were not included. The universities, I think we need to focus on what the universities are doing. And we need to work together. When it comes to things like vaccines or new technologies, we need to park the politics, I'm afraid. The politics gets in the way. I know people will disagree with me on that, and I understand what's happening in Northern Ireland is extremely important, and it can affect the single market as well. It could potentially damage the single market, which is fundamental to Europe. But there are things that are beyond politics, and we need to work together. Work with people in the United States, work with people in China. This is something that we may not agree with regimes around the world, but sometimes we have to work with them because if they're developing new technologies, or if they're doing something for the environment, for example, on climate change, we have to work with these people. We have to park part of the politics to one side. Doesn't mean that we don't criticize them. Doesn't mean that we don't think they're doing something wrong and call them out. But we have to, in a sense, compartmentalize what they've been doing. Maybe I'm sounding too pragmatic, or maybe too pragmatic. Beetle Greg, thanks so much for that super chat. Hi Max, let me ambush you with a few quid. Thank you so much, very kind. It's always great to be ambushed by cakes or quid. Thanks so much for that, very kind of you. Let me read some more of your comments. Boris has aligned himself with the UKIP BNP, the nutters who have organised football violence. Yes, you look at the sort of people who came in 2019. Sadly, the people who left in 2019 when Boris Johnson kicked out of the party, the old guard, people I don't agree with on politics, but they were decent people, reasonable people. A lot of those went in 2019. And Boris Johnson brought in some very, very weird and unusual people who should not be anywhere near the levers of power. A lot of the UKIPers came in on Boris Johnson's coattails as well. For example, George Eustace used to be a member of UKIP. So what does he think on issues unrelated to Brexit. I haven't looked at his Wikipedia page in a while, but what does George Eustace think about the environment? Truly, what does he care? What does he think about, controlling people's lives? What does he think about same-sex relationships? What does he think about many of these different issues? I don't know. He's a member of the Conservative Party now. He used to be a UKIPer, and we know what they're like. Johnson, Kwarteng School of Thought, don't test, COVID results go down, sorted. I hope that's not the case, but you're probably right. George is still useless. Action on climate change is now futile. I hope you're wrong on that. I fear that maybe you are right. I think perhaps at the stage of just trying to control the damage, not actually undoing it. It'll take a long time before we can actually undo it. Probably take a couple of 100 years. Boris Johnson using his boot boys to cling to power. I hope you're wrong on that. I keep hoping that people are wrong when deep down I know they're probably right. I don't know if they're Boris Johnson's boot boys, but he understands what type of language they understand. And it's a bit like Trump, where Trump will say, you should go in, or it'd be terrible if this happened to Mike Pence, or, you should stand up for your rights. What did he say? Stand back, not stand down, stand back, stand ready, or something like that. This is very dangerous behavior, because he knows that millions of people in the US, thousands of people in the UK, are listening to him and waiting for a command. Garrett, thanks once again for that super chat. Folks should realise that Brexit was a bad idea when Republicans and Unionists in Northern Ireland, two groups of people who rarely agree on anything, united behind the Remain campaign in 2016. Final one from me. Thanks so much, Gareth. Very kind of you. Thanks so much this evening for all of your support. Yeah, you had the Unionists, not the Loyalists or the DUP. The DUP are, I don't know what you'd call the DUP at this stage, but yes, it was mainly the Unionist Party and the Republicans in Northern Ireland who were against Brexit. They knew it was bad. They knew, look, we've spent so much time and effort building up this peace, turning life into some sort of normality for people. People in Northern Ireland wanted to be more concerned about bread and butter issues, about whether I get a job or whether I'd be able to find a place, find childcare for my children and be able to put food on the table. These were things that should have been important for people in Northern Ireland, but instead they were worried about, is it safe to go out at night? Is it safe to go into that area? Can I drive through this area? Can I have this type of job? Can I work for the police? Can I work in the civil service? Can I go into this pub? Who can I speak to? Who should I not speak to? These are the real concerns people had in Northern Ireland. There's a real risk that you could be in the wrong place at the wrong time and lose your life. Thankfully, we got past that, but some people want to bring it back. Some people would be very happy to bring it back, and I'm pointing the finger here at the DUP. The DUP would be very happy to put a border on the island of Ireland and sit back and allow the consequences to roll from that. They'd be very happy to see Republican paramilitaries attacking these borders and then Loyalist paramilitaries attacking the Republican paramilitaries, because it drives a wedge. It creates real hatred, and they profit from that. In a similar way to Nigel Farage profits from hatred as well. He's on TV on a daily basis, spewing hatred, creating division, and he profits from that. Literally profits from that. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. If more people knew the threats from global warming, they wouldn't be demanding that they all work together. Brexit is a massive distraction. Yeah, no, I agree. If we have to work together, we can't think of borders. We have to work as a planet together. We can't try and be fixing climate change. This is one of the problems I have with what's happening in Europe compared to other parts of the world. Is in Europe we seem to be going at top speed, investing in renewable energy, electric cars, things like this, retrofitting houses, developing new technologies, things like that. We're moving very quickly, but other recycling as well. But other parts of the world are moving much slower, and we need to work together. We need to move at the same speed, and other parts either need to be pushed politically, or they need to be given incentives, financial incentives. And I'd be happy. I'd have no problem paying a bit more if it meant that there was reforestation taking place in another part of the world, or increasing the quality of living for people in other parts of the world as well, providing resources for them. Because I remember reading about how a solar panel for a community in a poorer country is actually helping deal with climate change, because they're able to create free energy. They have the sun, they're able to generate free energy, while before they would be burning wood, and this was creating significant amounts of CO2. So by us investing in solar panels for this community, they have free energy, they're able to use it, work a pump or whatever, and they have a better standard of living because of that. And they're not creating CO2. Well, Mr. Super Chat from oops. Yes, sorry, yeah, number 3. Thanks so much for that. In my experience, the English conspiracy theorists who attacked Starmer are actually cowardly, unsure if they are that dangerous. EU doesn't get distracted, it continues to work while others are behaving like headless chickens. Boris Johnson already tried to manipulate voting across the ID requirement. It's calculated most without ID would vote for the opposition. Yes, and this is I hope this. These are some of these things that pop up on the radar and then they disappear again, and we need to keep an eye on them. What's happening with the voter ID rules? Ironically, Brexit hard man, what do you call freedom fighter, Steve Baker, was demanding that people's freedoms are restored. You know, he's one of these anti-lockdown people. Yes, we need to restore our freedoms, but at the same time, I want to bring in ID laws, because we don't want. he was saying he doesn't want lockdowns because he doesn't want a papers please. You know, like this rhetoric, papers please citizen, papers please society. And at the very same moment, he wants IDs brought in. So he wants the papers please. So when you go to vote, he wants papers please. When you're going into a restaurant or whatever, he doesn't want papers please. Going to the restaurant is not so important. Voting is important. And of course, they want to restrict people's access to vote because, as you said here, it means that they'll vote against the Conservatives. The Conservatives want to have smaller numbers of people coming out to vote. That means their people are going to come out to vote. It's typical of what's happening in the United States with the Republican Party. It's like copy and paste almost. Mogg is now Minister for Brexit Opportunities. It would be a lifelong search. Number 2, ironically, Brexit Minister for Opportunities also stands for management buyout, the very definition of Brexit. Yes. Okay, let's move on. I want to talk about the cost of living crisis, and Sky News interviewed some people about this.
Start with our viewers panel, so let's go to the wall. Mark Hill in Cirencester, can you tell us your experience?
Yeah, I'm married, my wife's disabled. I've worked at the same job for 22 years. My hip went back in July 2020, so I can't work at the moment. I had to deal with it, not being able to go to work, not being able to walk properly, being in pain, lockdown, rising bills, and now depression. I went on to universal credit when my sick pay ran out. It's the first time I've ever done it. The first thing that happened was I had £80 taken away from me, which was a surprise. I've used up all my savings just to get through paying the bills until I could get used to what I'm doing. I've cancelled a lot of subscriptions. I've even cancelled a couple of payments that I used to do to charities because I can't afford it. I've sold a lot of the things that I've built up over the years. I've sold just to get money in. Unfortunately, my gas supplier and electric supplier was one of the ones that went into administration. So my bills have gone from £60 to £160. We don't put the heating on at all. We keep the heating off. We use the washing machine once a week. We keep the lights off as much as possible to try and save electric and money. It's the gas that's the biggest problem. The gas is higher because we've got a gas cooker as well. So the gas is costing us more. I'm not so much worried about myself, although I'm suffering from depression because of it. I'm worried about my family and where we're going to be in the future.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could take this clip and broadcast it in the House of Commons and get Boris Johnson to respond to it? Get the Work and Pension Secretary to respond to this. This is what should be happening. It's not permitted, unfortunately, in the House of Commons to hold up a piece of paper or to show a clip. It would be wonderful if we could, because these are real stories. These are things that are affecting real people. And as I said on numerous occasions, Rishi Sunak has no understanding of the problems this man is facing. He can't understand the problems this man is facing because it's not just a matter of him earning he's worth £150 million. It's not just that. It's that he does not care. He's completely disconnected because it's not like somebody who used to be poor and then they arrived with that wealth. Rishi Sunak was basically born this way, born into wealth. But also, I think this is the fundamental difference between people understanding and people not understanding. Rishi Sunak will never be poor. You know, somebody could be rich at the moment. They could be running a successful business, for example, and they could get sick. They could be COVID, for example, and their business collapses, and they're out on the street, and they're into poverty. That could happen. That can happen to many, many people, but it's not going to happen to someone like Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson because they are in a position where no matter what happens, they will be financially stable. And that's why they cannot truly understand. I'm not saying that somebody who has millions of dollars or millions of pounds can't understand. Yes, they can. If they understand that, yes, tomorrow that could happen to me. I have a lot of money, but if something went awry, I could end up like this. That's what we need. We need people. And my criticism of people in Parliament is not so much about the money. It's about, do they understand what ordinary people are going through? And of course, Rishi Sunak in particular can't understand because he would never be in this situation. No matter if there was a complete and utter collapse in the economy tomorrow, he would still be financially okay. We'd have to go a long, long time before Rishi Sunak would run out of money. Many of us probably wouldn't be, our multiple generations would have to pass before Rishi Sunak would run out of money if he could live that long. So these people do not understand, and unfortunately, they're the ones making the decisions. The other day when Rishi Sunak was saying, I'm not focusing particularly just on Rishi Sunak, but he's the one he holds the purse strings at the moment. And unfortunately, there's a bit of a battle between him and Boris Johnson. He doesn't want to release more money because he sees it as helping Boris Johnson instead of actually helping real people. But it's not so much focusing on him, but it's this mentality of, well, it's never going to happen to me. And if you're an upper class Tory, you know that you're never going to be poor. So you can't empathize with people who are in a difficult situation. If you were in that situation in the past, you can empathize. If there's a risk it could happen to you in the future, you can empathize. But if you're financially safe, you have a massive cushion between you and poverty, an infinite cushion in a sense, then you can't empathize with people who are struggling. I just wanted to cover that story because I think it's important. Okay, we're almost towards the end of the stream. I just wanted to do another one, and then probably the last story for today. So, Guido Hari reportedly lobbied Number 10 Chief of Staff to stop ban on Huawei. The scandals, his feet are still wet from outside, and he's just literally in the door, and there's already a scandal. Boris Johnson's new press chief believed to have tried to stop Chinese firm from being dropped from UK's 5G network. So Boris Johnson's new communication director lobbied a former chief of staff at Downing Street not to ban Chinese technology company Huawei over spying fears leaked documents suggest. Guido Hari, who was appointed Number 10's press secretary on yesterday, is in the wake of Partygate resignations, reportedly asked Sir Eddie Lister, whose ministers could nudge for help. He met Lister, who was then Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, as well as 3 top executives from the technology firm Huawei, which has links with the ruling Chinese Communist Party. It's like, the Conservatives are equal opportunity corruption. I don't know, equal opportunity corruptees. They'll take money from anyone. Russians doesn't matter. Chinese Communist Party doesn't matter. I wonder what the Desmond Swains or the what was that, the red-faced gammon guy, Sir Edward Leeds of this world would think of this. Taking money from the communists. I know we don't know about money yet. The paper said that Hari represented a lobbying firm Hawthorne Advisors, used a 25-minute video call to ask which ministers to approach at a time when the security service was reviewing the risk of allowing the firm into the UK's core telecommunications network. This is how politics works. This is how government works. We all imagine that MPs are elected and then MPs make decisions. No, it doesn't work like that. He asked Lister if there were any ministers we should talk to, perhaps give a nudge in the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport or Treasury. The paper said that according to the minutes at the time, the Number 10 Chief of Staff suggested Johnson did not want to ban Huawei, but was caught between pressure from the Tory party and the US government. He said the Prime Minister is not anti-China and not Donald Trump, adding that that Johnson believed in good relationships with China. He is not coming from a negative place in any way. He added, "We are caught. We want the technology. We want to roll it out. There's an American concern and a parliamentary concern. There are a large number of MPs across the political divide who have a problem with China. Some are Atlanticists, some over COVID, some over Hong Kong, some are over human rights." Number 10 defended Hari's appointment by Johnson on Sunday when his links with Huawei were first reported, and said security checks have been concluded. There's no vetting process. It's like Boris Johnson throws darts at pictures on a wall and you go, okay, got that one. Yeah, we're going to hire that guy. Would you be surprised if that's how Boris Johnson hires people? I'm making a joke about it, but would you be really surprised if that's how Boris Johnson hired members of his team? However, the former Tory leader, Sir Ian Duncan Smith, joined Johnson's former aide Dominic Cummings in calling for further investigation into Harry's appointment. He said, given the issue of the threat to national security that Huawei poses and lay behind why Huawei had been banned from our 5G system, it's important that there is clarity in these matters. Will Guto Hari now be the subject of full security oversight, including past involvements with Huawei? Number 10 spokesperson told The Sun, in full compliance with appropriate guidance, government officials met with a number of interested parties, including Huawei, following the change in US policy. Telecoms providers were ultimately told they must stop installing Huawei equipment in the UK's 5G networks. What a mess. And this guy is now Boris Johnson. He allegedly, or maybe not even allegedly, he entered Boris Johnson's office and Boris Johnson asked if he needs to bend the knee because this guy was on GB News, would you believe it, until recently. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thanks to everyone who came on tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, the post-stream chat is on Discord. Anyone who's on Patreon, who's a patron, can access that. But before we finish, we have our one for the road. I want to say thanks once again to everyone who sent a super chat. Thanks to everyone who came on and smashed the like button. And thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. A lot of new faces tonight. Great to see you all on. So I hope you enjoyed this one for the road. Hopefully the volume isn't too loud.
I want to learn about your country.
Yeah, come on.
So I've got 10 questions for you.
Yes, come on.
Let's go.
Yeah, come on.
Where are you from?
Ireland.
What's the capital of your country?
Longford, Belgium.
What colors is your country's flag?
The pride flag, the gay pride flag.
What's your country's official language?
Chinese or Japanese.
What's the population of your country?
44 billion.
Approximately.
Come on.
What's the name of your country's national anthem?
Come out, ye black and tans.
Does your country have a president, a prime minister, a king, or something else?
King Michael D. Higgins, the little leprechaun bastard.
What food is your country famous for?
Spuds and Supermax and Coca noodles.
What sport do people go crazy for in your country?
Hurling and naked Vaseline wrestling.
If I visited your country, what one thing should I definitely do?
Bottle fell outside Supermax in Air Square.
Okay. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Have a great week. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Have a great week. Stay safe and have a good night. See you soon. Take care. Good night.